Hello and welcome to Alive to Thrive OT. I'm Lauren Lyman.
And I'm Tracy Schnappel.
And today we are going to be talking about technology, play, and development. So before we get started, I do just want to mention again, we are two occupational therapists who noticed a gap in the healthcare system. So we are here to do the research for you, to use our expertise as OTs to help you bridge some of those gaps. And today we're focusing especially on children so that we can help these children develop in the best way possible. So first, our legal disclaimer. This is for informational purposes only. So if you do have any specific medical questions, please seek out your medical provider. And we do not have any warranties or representations for the information provided, so proceed at your own risk. And if you do have a medical emergency, please call 911 immediately. So Tracy, let's get started. Let's talk about technology, play, and development.
Okay, great. So I wore my Las Vegas shirt because I feel like Las Vegas, Nevada, I recently went there and it's kind of like distractibility city, There's lights going, things going all the time, and it's like huge distraction. So if you're wondering, that's why I wore it. But yeah, I was watching the news recently and the doctors were saying they had some concerns because between television, tablets, cell phones, we have so much media right now. Video games that kids are using. It's affecting their brain function and their cognitive function. So as OTs, we look at cognitive function. So what is cognitive function? Because I feel like that's thrown around a lot and we're kind of experts in analyzing that. So there's basic cognitive functions like attention and memory. And then like orientation. So if you're in a hospital, your doctor might ask you, like, do you know what date it is today? And you're like, what? Like, of course I do. But he's checking or she's checking your orientation, your basic cognitive functions to know where you are. And those memory and attention issues are also checked by therapists to see how your cognitive function is. Higher level cognitive function is things like planning, organizing, sequencing. Those higher level things in order for us to be successful with a lot of higher level tasks like cooking or working or even executing the student role for a child. So the doctors were saying on the news about they were worried about children and having extra time with phones and media and how that could impact their cognitive processes. And then I started to think about, well, I'm under the link between, ADD and ADHD and technology. And so, again, we do the research for you. So when I looked up the National Institute of Research, they did look at I looked at a meta-analysis study. So they looked at a lot of studies that looked at the connection between technology and ADD. Now, ADD is attention deficit disorder. So we're seeing a huge influx of children with this disorder, and just in general, people in the past, I think about 15 to 20 years have had an uptick in this. So that's why these researchers at the National Institute of Health looked at a huge meta-analysis, so a bunch of studies that looked at ADD and addiction to technology to see if there was a link. Because addiction to technology is also a problem. I remember I read another article recently, and they were talking about how people are checking their Facebook and their social media the first thing in the morning and the last thing at night. And that's causing a problem if you can't put your phone down. I'll admit, sometimes I can't put my phone down, and I'm more aware, raising my own consciousness with doing this research, and as well as yours, hopefully. But it's just really interesting. So they did find, they couldn't find a causal relationship, but they did find a correlation. So a connection between technology addiction and attention deficit disorder and the severity of attention deficit disorder. So they can't say that one caused the other. It's probably also hard to prove causality.
You really can't prove causality in most cases unless you are studying lab rats. Because we have lives, there are other variables going on. You cannot completely control us. So they can't say one causes the other, but they can say, hey, as technology use increases, so do ADHD rates.
Right. So they were finding it was 2.5 times higher with people, adolescents and adults that were addicted to technology to have more severe ADD, ADHD symptoms. So that makes sense naturally to us as occupational therapists, which is why I asked that question, because, if you're constantly like paying attention to the phone, and I was wondering this about children, like if you have that constant feedback, because there's so many noises and jumping graphics and things happening, like how are you going to be able to really like stay focused on maybe like less interactive tasks, like everyday stuff that we have to do like as we get older and as we do in the classroom. So I was really wondering about that. And I was talking with a colleague of mine, and we were saying that like we're really wondering, how that's affecting not only cognitive skills, but motor skills, social skills, because as we're seeing, I mean, I'm just observing this, I didn't research this, like a lot of like young adults now and even adolescents, they don't have social skills that we have. Like they have a hard time, like I think like talking to people on the phone, talking to people in person, they're all texting,
Well, the more time you spend online too, you're not seeing people's reactions. I mean, you learn from the time you're a baby, you learn through observation, observing social relationships and experiencing social relationships. Well, if all of your relationships are on the internet, you don't have any idea what's going on with the person's face. You don't have any idea about their tone of voice.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had an experience where something was said in a text or an email and you took it the wrong way, right? Because you don't have that context of the way the person's saying something. So as these kids grow, they never learn. They never learn about these things. And then they go to work or they go somewhere where they're forced to be one-on-one with someone and they don't do well. Or they have anxiety about it because they're not used to being in those situations.
Yeah, and like real interestingly, in that meta-analysis, they were saying that people using internet excessively and pathologically suffer from adverse consequences, including arguments, fatigue, lying, poor grading in school or for vocational achievement, like you just said, social isolation, even functional problems such as school failure, job loss, and marriage failure. I've actually like known people that they have a lot of problems because like their spouse, like I knew someone where their spouse was always playing video games and stuff like that. And that becomes a problem because when it's an addiction, then they have difficulty separating from it. And then it becomes a social interaction problem between you and your partner because it's like, okay, like we need to spend quality time together and you're doing this, but then they're addicted already. And it's been for like, I mean, how many years? Because again, we're seeing kids right from really early ages picking up the technology. So like, again, they don't know which caused which, and it's hard to see causality. Is it like, the ADD that's the result of the technology addiction, or is it technology causing ADD?
Or there could be confounding variables. So a confounding variable is something on the outside that's causing it at the same time as all this other stuff is going on. So if you think about it indirectly, you are playing video games. A child is playing video games all day long. Is that causing their ADHD? Maybe, but also, as Tracy said in one of our other videos, spending 20 minutes outside every single day is just as effective as ADHD medication. In a study, they found this. So when you're inside playing video games, you're not outside in nature. So that could be another reason, because those are negatively correlated, right?
What I was thinking.
More video games, more ADD, less nature, more ADD.
And the less active you are, like if you start at an early age doing more sedentary things like video games or iPad games or whatever you do, you're going to be maybe less likely to be more active, like, with baseball or soccer or whatever. And then later on in life, that'll cause like problems with, like they were saying, like with children, there's an association, and I'm going to get to this too, in the Journal of Pediatrics, with increased BMI, so like increased weight, and the amount of hours TV watched. So obesity is a huge problem with adults and children in the U.S. now. Well, it's probably connected. It is connected to finding to like television watching and like, use of technology. So I'm just like really asking, parents and even people yourself to like really pay attention to like we were saying before in another video, how much you're watching TV or how much you're using your iPad. And the Journal of Pediatrics was saying for preschoolers, they'd actually recommend less than an hour of like technology exposure. So it used to be that way. Lauren sent me this really great article. It used to be that way in the schools where they had play-based and less technology-based, probably in homes too, because we didn't have that as much technology 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And then in the 1980s, they found that kids weren't performing academically as much as they would like, and they made this push for like Common Core standards and for, you know, math, writing, science to be emphasized. So even with like the little kids, they were like trying to push them into doing these subjects and doing like worksheets and, you know, listening to their teacher lecturing. But that's not really developmentally appropriate. As occupational therapists, we were just talking about this, like kids learn through play and interaction and like sharing. You need to learn how to share at a young age. You need to learn how to like explore something. You need to develop your hand muscles, like your trunk muscles. Those are prerequisites to being able to write. Your cognitive skills, like, you know, being able to have attention to something. And a lot of times with kids, they have to build attention to something that they're interested in first, and then like non-preferred activities later. So things like, you know, teacher talking and instructing in math when you're like really little. And now, I don't know if you guys have been in a kindergarten classroom lately, but a lot of them, you know, what was it in the past few years, although they're changing it now, we're having the kids in kindergarten like count by tens and like have to like do a lot of writing, not a lot of writing, but at least be able to do a sentence, and doing things that like were not so much developmentally appropriate or was really pushing them. So they decided to start doing a more play-based approach and go back to how things were like 30 years ago, and instead of removing those toy kitchens and toys and play areas and magnetic shapes and things that they could learn colors, shapes, and play and interaction skills naturally, that they return those back because they realize these prerequisite skills, like we already know as OTs, that you need, you know, for your motor skills, your social skills, that are important for those higher level learnings to develop. They realized it, put it back in, and now they're saying, like with the Journal of Pediatrics that just came, you know, not that long ago, that you shouldn't be having a child in preschool or kindergarten be doing more than an hour of technology, because they should be doing hands-on play-based learning.
There are several articles that say a child should not be in school until they're 7 years old, and that has shown a lot of significant benefits, both physical and intellectual. So kids who, and that's formal schooling, you know, if you go to daycare or if you have a kindergarten or preschool or somewhere that does appreciate play and interaction and things like that, that counts. But kids who were not started in academia until they were 7 actually performed better and had a higher IQ and better intelligence than kids who started school at a young age. Because again, you have to, it's like a pyramid. If you don't have your foundation, how can you build on it? So you're starting all this rote learning, and you know, rote memory is like, it's memorization. You're having kids memorize all this stuff, but they don't have problem solving skills. They don't have critical thinking skills. And yes, that develops with time too. But I mean, you learn cause and effect as a child, a small child. You learn how to problem solve as a small child. You know, motor planning as a small child. And if you're skipping all these steps and having them sit in a classroom and not explore and learn from their environment and their peers, you don't have the foundation to build on.
Yeah, so it's just really interesting reviewing all these articles, and just I wanted to be able to have a conversation about it, since like more and more now, like we're starting to look at kids using technology as for learning tools too, and being told to go home and you know, work on their Imagine Math and all these things like that. But I'm really encouraging, and we're really encouraging students, you know, to do more hands-on, more movement-based, more kinesthetic learning. And although we can't definitely say there's a causational relationship, like the use of technology causes ADD. We know that there's a connection. So I think it would be advisable to try to reduce screen time for our children and go back to what they're finding in the research from the Journal of Pediatrics, that reducing screen time helps with increasing physical activity. Subsequently, and we know this would improve motor skills. It improves cognitive skills. So again, the attention, memory, planning, sequencing, problem solving, higher level thinking. And that makes sense too, not just on a developmental level and a learning level, but also like circulation wise. So you think about, your blood flow. So you need blood flowing to the brain. And if we're sedentary and we're having our kids be sedentary, they're not getting that proper circulation for those neural circuits to be working and developing how they should be. So there's so many reasons why we need to move more and how we need to have our learning be more kinesthetic, more movement based, and take ourselves away from the technology. We also talked about in previous videos how technology, there's radiation coming from technology. So that's not like such a good idea to have so much exposure to it.
And screen time even affects your eye development. People can have vision problems from it. So if a student is on an iPad learning all day long, that's not good either. And handwriting. Yeah. If you're not writing anything, you're not developing your handwriting skills, which, okay, maybe if you think practically, well, handwriting, everything's done electronically anyways. I understand that, but handwriting is not just about the actual letter that you're writing. It's about fine motor skills, which can apply to every other aspect of your life. And again, if they're not playing and they're not writing, when are they developing these fine motor skills?
Yeah, I was reading one of the articles, and it was really cool how they were talking about in this play-based learning environment, how this little kid who was building like with blocks his own house, and he said that he put like a shield around the house, and so like he was applying like kind of higher advanced science concepts to his imaginary play. So we're also building creativity in kids. So if we're just doing like rote learning on the computer, like math problems or rote reading, that's not really developing their creativity. And that creativity is needed to solve problems, to be entrepreneurs, to encourage innovation. Life satisfaction, I'm sure, is correlated with that. So there's just so many really neat reasons to start pulling back from technology. Now I did find like some articles about how technology has been used to help kids with ADD. So it's not like all bad, because they have some technology. They were saying like iBooks and different ones that will read to your child if they have difficulty reading. And there's things that can help, but it could be also a hindrance. So you have to have a balance, like everything, do it in moderation.
Technology, I got my assistive technology professional certification. That's what I did for several years. And technology can be a great thing for people who need it because they can't be successful without it. But using technology as a crutch or as a way to as a way that's like preventing learning, that's where it's doing the damage, and that's how mainstream society is using technology. So yes, there is a time and a place for technology, absolutely. There are people who wouldn't be able to turn on a light switch, wouldn't be able to read without technology, wouldn't be able to turn a page in a book, but now they have the book that literally, the tablet that follows their eyes and can turn pages for them. Things like that are great. But if you're using technology as a way to give the kids something to do so you can get your work done, or give them the technology because it's easier than doing hands-on learning, it's less messy, things like that, using technology as a convenience is going to be a very large inconvenience for this child as they grow.
Yeah, and this was really interesting. So I took a snapshot of this from the study, and from the Journal of Pediatrics. They said the population-based studies continue to show associations between excessive television viewing in early child and cognitive language, because the adult or parent is not interacting. We ask questions to get children to start developing language, we talk to them to get them to practice the skill, even though maybe they can't fluidly do it like her and me are doing, because again, it's a skill, it's something acquired, so you have to do stepping stones. I work at a school, as they always tell us to approach the kids while they're playing and say, oh, what are you working on? That's really neat. Tell me about it, just so they can get that language development.
And even just that response, that emotional response, like, wow, look at what you're doing. That's so cool. My son is 21 months old, and whenever I am excited for him, he just, yay, and he claps, and he feels this sense of accomplishment that makes him want to do it again. It's rewarding behavior. So you're rewarding him for learning rather than him sitting in front of the TV and just watching, and maybe he'll pick up on it, maybe he won't, maybe he'll pay attention, maybe he won't. I mean, this is engaging him and rewarding him for doing something good.
And I'm sure, like, now that you said that, it builds endorphins in the brain, with that social interaction, that positive reinforcement, like, hey, great job, which are important for mood stability and, again, emotional regulation. So there's just so many
And
things.
again, social relationships, building that relationship, me giving my son a hug after he does something or learned a skill or whatever, that builds our relationship. Now he knows mommy's there supporting me no matter what I do. Mommy's there to help me learn. That's important for people to learn, that they can rely on other people. If you look at, again, that pyramid, that foundation, we need love, we need support in order to build all of our other personality traits, our other skills, and in order to feel as though we can shoot for the stars and reach our dreams and go for our goals.
Yeah, exactly. If you have somebody not ignoring you or negatively reinforcing you, that's going to affect your psychology later on and your motivation to go after what you want to go after. So yeah, there's just so many benefits to doing more hands-on interaction with the kids. And I know it's really tempting to put them in front of the TV or put them by the iPad and be like, here, go away. I have so much with work and the house and cooking, Yeah. But it's really vital to, again, language, cognitive development, social development, every single type of development interacting with your child is going to hit. So make sure that you try to reduce the screen time and increase your one-on-one interaction to the best of your ability. I know everybody has got a lot going on. And then the last thing before I don't want to forget this is that they said if you do have your child watching TV, make sure that it's programs like Sesame Street or PBS that have consulted with educators, developmental therapists, and have their curriculum designed specifically for this understanding of how children's brain and bodies work. Because you can stick your kid on a iPad or stick them in front of the TV, but if you're going to do it, at least have them do it with a learning program that's been proven to help with learning.
And you can tell the difference because if you do watch Sesame Street or Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, that's the newer Mr. Rogers, everything is slow. Movement is slow. You can easily follow them. Whereas if you turn on Cartoon Network, everything is fast, and you're really having to watch and pay attention. And there were studies about that too. Those those really fast-paced cartoons and how that's affecting ADD or causing or correlated with ADD. Because there's just so much you have to process at once. It's overwhelming for your brain.
The Journal of Pediatrics was also saying, be careful about the use of technology before sleep. So adults, if we have a screen on, it's sending us that signal, and during the day the sun is out, so our brain is used to it. Oh, it's daytime, I should be up and active. Oh, the sun is not out, I should be calm and starting to go to sleep when it's really dark, So the kids' circadian rhythms are like ours. So if you have them using technology close to bedtime, that's also been associated, they found, with decreased sleep. So it's just another factor if your child's having problems sleeping to look at.
And then if you think about it, if they're not sleeping well, that's restorative.
Yeah.
A lot of kids end up, if they're not getting good quality sleep at night, that could be the sole, and I'm not saying everybody, but that could be the sole purpose of someone's behavioral diagnosis. So I know a child who was about to be diagnosed with autism, but then they found out he had he was sleeping with his mouth open and breathing through his mouth, and that's a whole nother separate issue. But basically, once they addressed the issue and improved his sleep quality, he no longer qualified for the diagnosis of autism because all of his behavioral issues went away.
Wow.
So sleep is so important. I mean, you know how you feel when you don't get a good night's sleep. The next day, it's like I have a hard time putting sentences together.
Yeah.
So imagine for a child who needs, depending on their age, 10 to 12 hours of sleep every night.
You know, one time in OT school, I was studying for a final, and we had stayed up all night, my best friend and I. And the next day I'm in class, and I'm trying to take in the information. I look down, and I realize I can no longer read. It was from one night of not sleeping. The words blurred together, and I almost started crying as I looked at my friend like, Lindsay, I can't read. What have I done? So it's pretty traumatic, even if you think whatever, I can function off of no sleep, or my child is, if you know, it can't be affecting that badly. It could. So it's just food for thought, or thought for thought. I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah, we're getting away from that strict academia curriculum that they were starting to go towards, which is good. And I think the input of occupational therapists, and now doctors are starting to do studies on this. It's in journals. From an occupational therapy perspective, I mean, work, which is, I guess, what we're all going towards, academia, so you can learn, so you can work. That's one occupation. But again, each occupation is broken up into subcategories. What personal skills, what life skills do you need to be successful in this occupation? And academia is not the only thing you need to be successful in work. So, you know, I think we were thinking about this from a very basic understanding. But if you break it down into job components, you know, what do you do in a job? You have to interact with other people. You might have to host meetings. You have to have time management skills. You have to plan. There are so many things that you're not learning from rote memory, decisions. That you're not learning from memorizing math, and reading is important, yes, and you do develop a lot of skills from reading, but we're missing those other components. So as occupational therapists, our occupations are work, but also play, which we argue as OTs that is the most important occupation for a child, is play. Social interaction. Sleep is an occupation, definitely. Your activities of daily living. So if you're not working on your fine motor skills, are they going to be even able to button up their shirt? Right?
Probably not.
Instrumental activities of daily living, like being able to cook and do things like that. See, I went out of order. Leisure. So that's like the play for adults, basically, leisure. And I'm missing some, of course.
But that gives you like a good idea about all the different areas that occupy our lives and the skills that are needed to perform those areas and to have a well-rounded, balanced person. So we're just advocating to think logically about your health care and about childhood development, because those kiddos are going to be our adults running the country and the future. So we want them to really be equipped to do that and to have like a better world. And that's pretty much sums up what I wanted to talk about with you today. So
if you could please like our video, please share the video with other people. This is such an important topic. We really need to make sure our kids are getting the best, well-rounded education. So like Tracy said, they can run our world and be successful adults. If you could please subscribe to our channel, sign up for alerts so you know when we post videos. Visit us at www.facebook.com/Lauren and Tracy. And then send us an email at alive2thriveot@gmail.com if you would like to see some of these articles, if you want information on nutrition and how that can help improve your children's behavior, or if you are interested in a life coach to help you out in many areas of your life.
And as always, we are wishing you physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Thank you for being here with us. It's nice to see you, and come back again soon. Bye-bye.